Damaged by Police Dial 123, Chapter 17, Questions of Loyalty. Naruto gazed out over his garden, the moonlight lighting up the various flowers and plants. He stepped lightly down the path, bare feet barely disturbing the small stones that made up the paths. Naruto looked up at the full moon and breathed deeply, inhaling the crisp night air. He looked at the Konoha symbol tattoo on the inside of his right arm. He had it made to remind him of his loyalty to the village. It was done in red, Sarutobi's color. It was a little more intricate than the plain one on the headbands. He would be forever loyal to Konoha if Sarutobi ordered him to. No headband could ever say that. Could you ever notice his own headband anyways? It was sewn into the bottom corner of his coat, hidden amongst the feather patterns. Naruto looked away from his arm and let his arms hang lightly by his sides, white sleeping kimono brushing against his skin. He looked back to the sky and closed his eye a moment, which he looked back down. It was to let a splatter of blood hit the stone path. He lifted his hand and gently touched his eye patch. Red teardrops leaked from the edge of the patch, telling him the scars on his eye had opened again. Kyubi wouldn't heal it. Naruto didn't want the scars healed. His fists clenched in anger as he glared out at the night sky. How he hated the civilians of Konoha, along with many of its shinobi. Sharp claws dug into his skin, slightly letting beads of blood roll over his skin in patterns. Naruto finally released the fists and sighed, looking out over his garden again. Kirimaru stood in the doorways, watching him. Naruto walked slightly over to the teen, who looked so much older. He reached up and rested his hands on the sides of the boy's face. He pulled the boy's face down and planted a kiss on his forehead. "Never leave me," he whispered. "Never," Kiyomaru assured. Naruto sighed contentedly and leaned into the boy, resting his head on Kiyomaru's shoulder. Naruto hummed any tune, softly under his breath. He sat on a roof and watched as Sasuke and Kakashi slipped from a hospital window. Kakashi steered Sasuke towards him and landed beside him on the roof. Naruto didn't break the tune and continued humming. Sasuke shifted while Kakashi unclipped the scroll from his vest. Without a word, he handed it to Naruto. Naruto stuffed it into his coat pocket and smirked up at the jonin. "Have fun." Kakashi gave him a bland look and took off with Sasuke. Naruto watched them before turning back to the hospital. Sakura was exiting, looking downtrodden. Naruto stood and leapt gracefully to the ground, landing beside her. She gave a soft eep as she looked at him with wide eyes. He pulled the scroll from his coat and handed it to her. She took it, looking confused. "Study that," he said simply. She gave him a grateful look. Then he paused to think a moment. "Find a man named Gekko Hayate. Tell him I sent you." She gave a quick nod and almost ran off, looking determined, but he held up a hand. "And come see me at some point." She didn't ask why, just quickly nodded and smeared it off. Naruto watched her go. Naruto moved the paper through his fingers, making a small origami flower. The small girl in front of him giggled softly. She could be no older than 4, with dark hair and dark eyes. He couldn't hate the children as much as he did the adults. They were innocent. It was for that reason he disliked them. They were innocent where he had never been able to, but he didn't hate them completely. As he finished the last fold of the flower, he pulled out a small marker and quickly wrote on the paper petals. When he was finished, he handed the girl the flower and stuck it in her hair. She giggled and then leaned up and pecked him on the cheek before skipping off. Behind Naruto, Hayate waited patiently. "What does the seal do?" he asked as he watched the girl run off. "Stop the flower from burning or tearing," Naruto answered blankly. He turned to the man who shifted his weight. "Why did you send Haruno to me?" Hayate finally asked. "She needs training." Hayate silently looked to the sky, and for a moment there was only silence. "Fine, I owe you anyways." Naruto guided the ink needle away from Sakura's arm. Her left arm was gripped in his right hand, starting at her wrist and going up to her elbow on the side of her arm. A bunch of butterfly tattoos. They started small at the wrist, only the size of a fingernail, and steadily grew as they got farther up her arm. They were done in mixtures of pinks, blacks, purples, and red. He set the needle down and looked up at Sakura, who was examining the pattern with delight. He tightened his grip on her arm, and she tensed, looking up at him. "If I find you have used my butterflies like they are slaves, I will kill you. You will treat them right." She nodded hesitantly. He let go of her arm, and she quickly stepped in an arm's length away. "And get new clothes," he said. "The ones you wear are more restricting than necessary, and cut your hair. It's too long and thick." She bit her lip and hesitantly nodded. Behind him, Hayate shifted. "I shall help her," he said. Good, Naruto said. Then he gathered his things up. Now leave. If you aren't out of my forest in an hour, my animals will tear you to pieces. They left quite quickly. Uzumaki Naruto. Naruto glanced up at the man with a half-lidded eye and lazily looked him over, his face made of apathy. Yes, he asked. The Hokage wishes to see you. Immediately. Ah, he stood as the Anbu vanished in a plume of smoke. He glanced around the market once, ignoring the glares and whispers, and vanished onto the rooftops. A minute later, he stood in front of the Hokage's desk. The Hokage was shuffling papers and silently planning. Naruto waited patiently. Finally, the Hokage set his paper down. He looked up at Naruto and met his eyes squarely. Naruto, are you loyal to me? Naruto bowed his head. I am loyal only to you, he said clearly. Would you listen to my every command? Yes. Even if it was for this village? Yes, if you were the one to command it. Would you kill yourself if I asked? Naruto searched his eyes, but Sarutobi already knew his answer. Yes. And Sarutobi sighed and tapped the ash from his pipe. Naruto, you're one of my most loyal ninja. You trust only me, and in return you are the only one I trust above everyone. Naruto waited. I have been organizing a treaty with Kumo for the past few months. The Kage was recently replaced, forcibly. The new Raikage is a good man whom I have met before. We have many similar ideas and such. The new Raikage also admits his former leader made a mistake capturing Konoha and torturing him for information. He has sent a sum of money to Hayate along with a gift of 2 swords forged by their best smith. He also started to work out a treaty with myself. To seal the deal, we agreed a marriage contract. Sarutobi sighed and blew out a ring of smoke as he looked at Naruto almost regretfully. Naruto understood. He just bowed his head. The Raikage sent his daughter, his much beloved daughter. The only request was she be married to a man who would protect her and care for her, and to someone I trust. He loves her very much and does not want someone taking advantage of her that. She has only minimum kunoichi training, and she has been going to be a gardener, not a kunoichi or leader like her younger sister. The Raikage informs me she is quiet and a loner. She is also barren. She can give no one children, but the council has voted she must be married into a clan, into a family she will be protected in. For if she dies of an accident here, it may start discord among our nations. At the moment we cannot have that, but many may wish for that to happen. He understood that. Neither could feel war in the air and knew they needed at least one allied nation. But if she marries into a clan, she will have access to higher level information. I do not think she is a spy, but all shinobi are paranoid. They said I may choose her groom, but he must be of a clan or someone of equal importance and someone who can protect her well. I will not marry her to just anyone. It must be someone I trust. Naruto met his eyes. A lone blue eye showed nothing but apathy, as old wise eyes showed a reluctance but a hardened determination. I will do anything you command me of, Naruto replied after a moment of stony silence. The Hokage sucked in, making the embers of his pipe flare. He blew out another ring of smoke. I know. There will be no wedding celebration. She will be here within 2 weeks. He nodded and made for the door. Naruto. He paused. Thank you. Naruto nodded and stepped from the door, shutting the door behind him. He heard the Hokage mutter one last sentence to him. Sometimes I wonder what you will do after I die, and you have no loyalty ties to anyone. Naruto had no answer. Married? Kimaru echoed in what Naruto guessed was shocked. Yes, married, he said again, frowning. Is it not of love? No. So husband is just another title of yours? Yes. Nothing will change? No. Kimaru finally nodded, accepting this. As the bone user walked off, Naruto thought a moment. He would marry if Sarutobi asked it of him. He'd never really thought on why he was so loyal to the man. Yes, he had helped Naruto often and saved him when little, but any good person who should have done so. He frowned. His face softened, though, as he remembered some of his earlier memories. He could remember Sarutobi's smile and his soft voice as he told Naruto stories. His kind hands as he gave Naruto food and clothes. Naruto knew the council had outvoted him long ago when he'd wanted to help Naruto. They'd banned him from ever truly helping Naruto, but Sarutobi had found every loophole in the agreement and used it. Sometimes even outright defying the terms. He'd helped Naruto, been kind to him. Even though his job was on the line and his actions could start a civil war, Naruto would pay him back with loyalty. Naruto turned and walked towards his bedroom. He would need to prepare for his new guest. End of chapter 17. Damaged by Police Dial 123, Chapter 18, A Wife and a Godfather. He examined her quickly, taking everything in. She had dark brown hair that flowed to the middle of her back, dark brown eyes, and soft tan skin from staying in the sun often. Her hands looked delicate but used. She wore an elegant green kimono with flowers of silver flowing over the edges. The only weapon she carried was a knife disguised as a fan tucked in her obi. She sat side saddled on a tall chestnut-colored horse. Silently, beside her sat her father on a tall war horse. Following were 10 Kumo shinobi, joining at least, surrounding the two in a battle formation. Naruto sat next to the Hokage on Akira. His tiger stood like a statue, not bothered by the two people on his back. Sarutobi slid off Akira as the Raikage slid off his horse. They both walked forwards, and for a moment there was a tense silence. Then small smiles broke the men's faces. "It's good to see you, Sarutobi, and you, Mitoshi." Mitoshi, the Raikage, laughed as they bowed to one another. Then business faces were on, and a contract was pulled from both their pockets. Each held all the signatures of each of their councils. They both signed both contracts and then exchanged them. "The agreement is made. Kumo is allied with Konoha. We will exchange missions equally, and trade shall commence between us. Konogakure ninja are welcome in Kumogakure, and Kumogakure ninja are welcome in Konogakure." The Raikage motioned his daughter over. She slid off her horse and kept her eyes downcast as she stepped up next to him, hands folded delicately in front of her. "My daughter, Takashi Sae, her marriage shall cement our agreement." Sarutobi gave a curt nod. "Come here, Naruto." Naruto slid from Akira's back and stepped up to the Raikage, back straight, eye forwards, and spear held straight. "This is Uzumaki Naruto. He shall be marrying Sae to cement our agreement." Then the two Kage stepped back, leaving the two standing in front of one another. "I am Takashi Sae. I accept you as my husband, as is my duty." "I am Uzumaki Naruto. I accept you as my wife, as is my duty." Naruto bowed, and he took her hand, gently brushing his lips against it as his one frozen eye met her timid ones. "I swear to protect and care for you for as long as we are married and this agreement between our villages stands." She bowed her head. Sarutobi stepped back up to Naruto. "We must be on our way now." Sae nodded and turned to her father and formally bid him farewell. "We are blind," Sarutobi said softly. The Hokage dropped the formality and swept his daughter into a hug. They waited silently as Sae and her father traded heartfelt farewells. When she finally hesitantly stepped up to Naruto, Sarutobi nodded to her father. Then Naruto slipped his sleeves up and bit his thumb. He swiped it on a seal symbol, and in a puff of smoke, a black panther larger than a horse but smaller than Akira appeared, with rippling purple/black fur and large golden eyes. The Kumo shinobi stiffened but made no moves against him. "Kira shall be your guardian for when I am not around. She will listen to your commands unless it puts you in danger or it is illogical," Naruto said curtly. Sae shakily nodded and slowly reached out. Kira nudged her hand with her nose and sniffed the girl before giving a single purr. Then Naruto helped her onto the large panther. "I see now why you brought only one guard," Mitoshi said softly. "He can summon an army of beasts." Sarutobi nodded. Then he mounted Akira while Naruto slipped on behind Sae to help her for the first ride. There was a moment of silence. Then both parties were gone. Are you sure you wish to allow Sae-sama to marry that boy?" The Jonin sneered as he leapt along his Raikage. She will be kept safe. Sarutobi told me he trusts the boy absolutely, more than his students. But that boy is the reason why those animals attacked us those years ago. The reason why one Anbu, 3 Jonin, 7 Chunin, and 5 Genin are dead, and over 20 ninja injured. His attack was justified. The former Raikage made a mistake capturing and torturing a Konoha ninja. He broke our neutral agreement, which we've held since he replaced the Raikage who formed the attack on Konoha's Hyuga. We are lucky that the Hokage is willing to trust us again after 2 attacks on him by former Raikages. If I was him, I would have been calling for blood or waged an outright war. The man fell silent. Besides, a man who can sneak into Kumo, rescue a man, kill another man, summon over 50 beasts, and escape, all without showing his face, is a strong warrior. He will be able to protect my daughter. The man bowed his head and vanished back into the formation. Naruto nodded farewell to Sarutobi as he dropped the man off at the Hokage's tower. Then they were leaping off to his forest. Sae gripped his arm around his waist tightly as they passed by the animals of his forest. It was half an hour later they reached his tower. Kimimaru was waiting out front wearing baggy tail pants tied at the ankles and a baggy white long-sleeve shirt with billowing sleeves, an obi of purple holding it shut. Naruto helped Sae off of Kita, and the panther nodded to them before vanishing into the trees. Sai, this is Kimamaru. He is loyal only to me. If you need help, just ask him. Sai, Kimamaru murmured, bowing slightly. Hello, Sai said timidly. Come, I shall show you your room. They entered the room next to Naruto's, which was decorated in light greens, filled with furniture and plants on the windmill. A bathroom of yellows was attached along with a door leading to Naruto's room. This is your room. The door to my room is open should you need me. You may go anywhere in the tower and yards, as long as you do not wreck my gardens. If you venture into the forest, take either Kimamaru, myself, Kira, or Akira. The animals will kill you unless they know who you are, he said chillingly. She nodded slowly. Sha. She paused. Shall I be allowed to go into the village? You may do as you wish. I am your husband out of duty, not love. She understood. He was not hers. He was not faithful. He did not love her. Duty held them together, and that was a mere formality. Naruto watched the old man a moment. He was nothing like what Naruto thought he would be. The old man giggled as he peeked through the wood. Naruto went over to stand next to him. The man didn't even glance at him. Naruto pulled himself to lean on the fence. The women in the bath squealed as they saw his crossed arms and head. Many dived for towels or sunk into the water. The only ones who didn't were Anko and Kurenai. Kurenai glared at him, and Anko just gave him a wide, inviting grin. There is a pervert peeking through the fence and writing notes on your bodies. Hey! The old man yelled, jumping up, indignant look on his face. Then he squeaked, realizing he had given himself away. The woman turned red with anger. Uncle Kurenai leapt up and grabbed towels before leaping over his head and pinning the old man down as he tried to run. Naruto watched in an uninterested manner as they beat the old man near death. Then some of the women spun to him, fist raised. Uncle stepped in front of them and looked him over. Naruto raised a brow and then did the same to her. You're the boy who took over my forest, she finally said. He tilted his head in a half nod. Then he looked her over again, peering into her eyes. I should tell my animals to leave you alone if you wish to train in the first kilometer. She gave a smirk. Then Naruto caught sight of the curseal. He reached out with his spear. She tensed, but allowed him to tap her shoulder with the butt of his staff. He trailed it lightly over the horrid purple mark. To him it was beautiful and cruel, beautiful in power, design, intelligence, cruel in power, design, intelligence. Everything it was beautiful for, it was also cruel for. He stared at it a moment and noticed how it clashed with the woman's pale skin. It made the design all the more beautiful, cruel. Come to me sometime and I shall remove that also. He pulled his spear back and she slapped a hand over the mark. Her eyes widened in shock and she stared dumbly at him. Kurenai also stared at him. The other woman didn't. They still glared at him, not understanding the significance of the conversation. It's your turn now, little perv, one growled. Trying to save your own skin by turning in your partner won't work. They stepped forwards menacingly. Naruto rolled his eyes at them. I came to pick the old man up, not spy on your bodies, he said before pausing. Besides, I like men better. Then in a flash, he was the old man and picked him up. He leapt off before anyone could say anything. Jiraiya blinked as he felt cold surrounding him. He tried to gasp for air, but his lungs filled with water. He choked and realized he was in a river. He swam in the direction he perceived as up and broke the surface. He gasped for air, spitting out the water and taking a ragged breath of air. He clambered from the cold water onto land and quickly looked for whoever had tossed him into the river. His eyes met one lone blue eye. He froze as he took in the appearance of his attacker. Long blonde hair pulled back in a braid, beads hanging from various locks of hair, loose black shorts, wooden geta sandals, and a long black coat which also had ice blue feathers designed lining the bottom trim, and a spandex black shirt with wisps of icy blue through it like ice. Under the coat covered his lean form. A fang hung from each ear, and a wooden necklace hung from his neck. A black eye patch covered one eye. Uzumaki Naruto, he muttered. Jiraiya, the teen nodded. I want my father's techniques. What? Jiraiya asked in surprise. I want the scroll with the Horizon and the Rasengan on them. Oh, he said dumbly. It took him a moment. Then he saw that this boy would not negotiate over this. His icy blue eyes said he would refuse Jiraiya's training and help. Jiraiya grimly pressed his hands together and did quick hand signs. He bit his thumb and hit the ground. A large cloud of smoke appearing. A toad the size of a man appeared, a blue and orange scroll on his back. Jiraiya took it with a muttered thanks and dismissed the toad. He slowly held the scroll out to the boy. Naruto took the scroll and swung it onto his back, nodding curtly at him. He was about to jump off when Jiraiya grabbed his arm. He tensed and glared. Jiraiya ignored the killing intent and looked the boy in the eye. If you ever need help, he left the offer hanging. I will never need help from you, godfather, Naruto said icily, his words venomous and his tone frigid. Jiraiya flinched and let his arm go. He watched the boy vanish, so the boy knew he was his godfather. Jiraiya looked down. He hadn't been much of a godfather, though. He'd never been there for the boy. It was his own fault, and he couldn't blame Naruto if he hated him. End of chapter 18.